the Norman Conquest, the 100 Years' War, expansion of the Mongol Empire, and the rise of Moscow? Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'm reviewing Age of Empires 4.
Good hunting, soldier.
Age of Empires is a quintessential RTS. It's one of the OGs of the genre, and AoE 4 has completely blown me away, guys. I've always been more of a StarCraft player, to be honest, but Age of Empires 2 is a classic masterpiece that I love and have continued to dip back into over the years. And although the new one does retain some minor elements from the third game, it's definitely a spiritual successor to 2, so if you're like me and returning to the franchise, you'll be happy to know Age of Empires 4 has returned to its roots. We're starting with the gameplay, and I'm going to hit this in 2 different chunks, the first being its single-player campaign, which absolutely deserves some dedicated time, and secondly, its PvP and PvE modes. The single player is made up of 4 different campaigns that follow various empires through their conquests and wars with each other through the Middle Ages. And despite the franchise always being pretty loose with history for the sake of gameplay and storytelling, playing Age of Empires 4 is like being part of a freaking badass History Channel special. Take the first campaign, for example. You get to play as William the Conqueror, who leads the Normans to invade England. And not only do you get to play in some of history's most iconic Middle Age battles with some incredible narration, but in between, you get treated to these incredible modern-day videos of the castles and locations where the game takes place, where they add in animated sequences showing what happened back in the day. And these scenes will then seamlessly transition back into gameplay cinematics that take you into your next missions. It's absolutely a creative and cool way to tell the stories and totally immersed me into its world. On top of that, as you progress through the campaigns, you'll unlock additional documentary-style videos where they teach you about all sorts of cool middle-age shit. I've honestly learned more playing Age of Empires 4 than I ever have about this period of time, guys. There's a video on how castles were made, what the crossbow's function was in battle, and how soldiers actually used it, how trebuchets worked, and how they were used in battle, and how armor was created. It's a huge and impressive list of videos that didn't even need to be there, but I'm so glad they were because I learned a ton and it made the whole experience so much better. The effort put into making the game historically accurate is no joke either. The developers actually collaborating with Microsoft and the University of Arizona on a project-focused course where students who play the game and engage with unique educational content that the developer plans to include on the Age of Empires website can actually earn academic credits towards their degree. It's pretty damn cool, and personally, I'm extremely impressed with it all. The production value is so high, and with how much I learned, and most of all, how fun and rewarding it was to be part of it, I'm not surprised that they're doing this. Alright, let's hit the PvP and PvE next, and without grinding on all the little changes, I'll just say that overall, the game has returned to a more Age of Empires 2 approach, which I'm really happy to see. The card system from 3 is gone, which is great. Managing your resources is more like 2, despite a few changes of its own. Building a wonder as a win condition is back, with a cool counter condition that's available by holding 3 sacred sites, and there's a new influence system in the game where, say for instance, you're playing as the English and build a mill. There are certain farm locations that surround that mill which will receive a gather buff if it's built within this influence zone. This changes from building to building and between civilizations, but I really like it. Aging Up also has some cool changes where you now have to build a landmark to get to the next age, and you get the option between 2 different buildings to do so, which each come with their own perks, and these change as you continue to age up depending on the build path you want or need to take. It all plays absolutely awesome too, guys. The maps are all fun to play on. The 8 different civs released so far are all super interesting and differentiate themselves nicely with unique perks that lend towards different play styles. The rock, paper, scissors combat counters are as fun as they ever were, and you can tailor a custom game in so many different ways. The customization options are awesome, and whether you're playing online PvP or against the AI, you'll find a good challenge with tons of variety. And when you put the time in to practice and master your control group management or your build orders, it is extremely rewarding as you make progress and get better and can make those next steps toward a more difficult challenge. It honestly had been a while since I'd really spent a lot of time in an RTS game, so I started out playing hard AI bots, and it took me about a week and a half before I was able to consistently defeat them. They're efficient, creative, and relentless on the harder difficulties. But after working on getting my economy built up faster and focusing on military units sooner while utilizing strategic control group management, I was able to consistently defeat them with ease. My whole point here is, whether you're a veteran of the genre or a newcomer to RTS games, the effort put in to improve will undoubtedly result in a super rewarding experience that, for me, made Age of Empires 4 fun as hell to get good at and play, guys. And hooking up with your friends and playing co-op against AI, or playing against each other, or grouping up to play against others in PvP is equally challenging and fun, where combat creativity and counters make for some incredibly dynamic and competitive games. Gameplay-wise, I literally only have one complaint, which is that the combat unit pathing can be a bit of a mess sometimes, especially in tight areas or where there's a choke point. Outside of that minor issue, it's pretty damn perfect, guys. I'm giving gameplay 5 out of 5 stars. Graphics are next, and this is one area I really think they could have done better. It's not a bad looking game, and at times it does impress, particularly when you're burning down and demolishing your enemies' towns and fortresses, or when you have a huge army that's marching towards their base. But the textures aren't great, and a lot of the time it just feels like there should either be more details or effects that would really polish things off and give the maps more life. I also got a poke at the unit animations as well, which just looks stiff and clunky in general, and I also wish they would have brought back the decaying corpses. And yeah, they would get in the way sometimes when trying to micro live units on the battlefield, but it was such a cool, visually immersive touch that I wish were at least an option here. So it's decent looking, but doesn't wow enough. I'm giving graphics 3 out of 5 stars. Audio's up next, and the game's soundtrack is phenomenal, guys. There's 10 tracks in total, and each one in some way taps into the featured civilization's authentic sounds of the time. They used 3 live orchestras, 2 choirs, and over 20 soloist musicians from all over the world, and recorded in 11 different studios to put this together. And by utilizing specific instruments from each culture and highly skilled musicians from relevant regions in the game, they composed a truly epic soundtrack. Sound effects are all great as well, but the other super impressive aspect in this category is the voice acting, guys, which is hilarious. Like, it's straight up silly, okay? But it's also super accurate and cool. All the voiceovers use historically accurate punctuation from each civilization's language, and what they say and how they say it will sometimes change depending on the situation. For example, the languages will slightly evolve through the ages as you play, and say for instance you have archers that you're playing stealthy with and are hidden in forest trees, they'll whisper to each other. Or if you give a scout a command when they're off your screen, you can hear their reply echo from a distance. Like I said, phenomenal, guys. I'm giving audio 5 out of 5 stars. Story's up next, and I covered quite a bit already regarding how it tells its story. So I'll just say that the return to the Middle Ages was a welcome change, and the scenarios you get to play through are some of the most epic and interesting within the time period. I'll just give you one example. During the 100 Years' War between Britain and France, where they were fighting over who would rule Britain, the war dragged on and on, leading to resources drying up, with extensive casualties on both sides, and eventually a stalemate had occurred between between the two countries. To break this stalemate and determine who would become ruler, a battle called the Combat of the 30 was agreed upon between both countries, where each would gather 30 of their finest soldiers to fight against each other in one final battle. And you get to play out this battle, guys. It's just incredible and so much damn fun, and all 4 campaigns have their own unique scenarios like this that you get to play through. Its story is the best Age of Empires and the best historically based game I have ever played. I'm giving story 5 out of 5 stars. Settings are up, and let's start with the key rebinds, which are located under controls, starting with the hotkey grid, which is great, and you can reassign these to any action you'd like. Then under common keys, you have all your camera, unit management, and control group binds, which overall were fine. My only complaint here is that you can't bind certain actions to your mouse buttons, and the shift and alt keys can't get reassigned, which was frustrating. You can swap shift and alt, which I prefer, but I would have liked to reassign them all together. Moving on to video and graphics, which were great. All the video options you'd want are here. It supports widescreen aspect ratios as well, and a quick note that it's DX12 only, so there's no exclusive full screen mode. Graphics are great as well. You get a ton of options to tweak for performance or quality that you'd need. Let's move on to audio, and this was perfect too. You get a master music, speech, and sound effects dial to adjust, and there's quality and dynamic range settings below, which were great. And last up are the gameplay options, which are covered under a few different tabs. There's camera options here that cover all your panning and mouse settings. Then under game, you've got all your tutorial pop-ups, player colors, and box selection behaviors. And finally, under UI, you've got your HUD options where you can turn on the game timer as well. There's no colorblind modes, which is unfortunate, especially because the latest definitive releases of the last 2 titles included them, so I don't know why they're not here, but it gets a lot right with only a couple misses. I'm giving settings 4 out of 5 stars. Let's give it a final score, and Age of Empires 4 is absolutely a return to form for the franchise, and for me, is the best RTS experience I've had since StarCraft 2. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. It's a must-buy, guys. The single-player campaign alone is incredible with top-notch storytelling and gameplay, and the customization and competitive replayability of its PvP and PvE modes are some of the best any game in the genre has delivered to date. And if you're new to RTS games, Age of Empires 4 makes it super easy to learn the basics with some cool tutorial scenarios you can play through, and they even include tutorial challenges that make it fun to learn and figure out where you can grow and improve. I highly recommend it. Guys, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, please give me a like below, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe and bell button to join me for all my future reviews. Check out my Patreon if you'd like to support. There's going to be a link that pops up right at the end here. I could really use your support, guys, and I would love to have you part of the community. Thanks again for joining me, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.